You can, I think he was going to talk about things. Because you can't get, once you're in any sort of powerful position, you do know about these things to a certain degree. You might not know all the ins and outs, and you might not know, all of the convoluted bits. But people of influence do know these things. Scottish Rite Masons is based on this. People know about Jerusalem.
Okay, well, let's kind of stop right there because I'm very interested.
And the stories, as you talked about in your introduction, the stories of the Romans and the Jews are in fact the stories of the Romans and the ancient Britons. And the reason that the Jewish question is confused is that Constantine in the 375 AD, at the Council of Nicaea, moved, did not physically move them, but told the world that the places that where the things that actually happened were in the Middle East rather than in the United Kingdom. Changed the whole course of world history.
Yeah, that is such a strange twist in this whole saga. Do you have any, or does he have any explanation as to why Constantine made that switch? I understand that there were certain political reasons why he chose to do that.
It seems to have been for short-term political reasons at the time, yes. He was moving, they were losing control of Britain. They were losing control of ancient Britain at the time. The empire was falling apart. And he had a new capital in Constantinople. And so he moved all of the stories, all of the sites, over to the Middle East.
So it was in part sort of just an arbitrary act of power, in a way. And
it was to his benefit, and it was also to keep the empire going.
Right.
Constantine was actually born in York. There's historical proof that he was born in York. His mother was British, and she was actually a pagan, British pagan, but he converted her to the Roman version of Christianity. And Christianity, in its original form, was sorry, I'm having pain in the bad foot here. Christianity was an original philosophy that was not remotely like it is, like the control system that it's become through the Romans.
Right. It does appear that he seemed to have taken Christianity, or the stories of Christ specifically, and changed them. Correct?
Yes, he did. And he put them in the Middle East for his own short-term purposes. Comyns Beaumont is convinced that Jesus, the man who was called Jesus by the Romans, actually did live and work as a healer and a preacher in Britain.
Okay, right. Now this is really interesting, and I did look into this in his book, and I'm wondering why I don't know if it says here anywhere where he talks about why the sort of subterfuge or the fraud or whatever you want to call it was perpetuated. Like, how did that happen?
It's a strange thing. It's a very, very odd thing, but it's a thing that no one seems to have questioned since then. The Council of Nicaea, they were trying, what was happening was that he wanted to keep the empire together. Christianity was a very good way of doing that, just as it is now. If they could get people to believe in Christianity and to follow their rules, which they had attached to Christianity, then that was the perfect way of controlling a falling apart empire. And so if they had the sites close to Rome, close to Constantinople, which is where his power base was, he'd only been in Britain because his father was emperor of the West over here before him. So they moved back. He moved back when his father died to Constantinople, which was to be his power base, associating the things with those areas. Now, I think the best way to answer your question, the way that Constantine did it was his mother he sent his mother, who was really, really devoted and fervent Christian, and then took on the Roman ideas. He sent her to the site where he wanted Jerusalem to be, where they had decided that Jerusalem should be. He sent her with adamant about is that the stories which are told about the Romans and the ancient Jews are the stories of the Romans and the ancient Britons, and he's pretty well circumscribed there. He doesn't say that there weren't any other catastrophes, but that's what he's concentrating on. He doesn't say that there weren't any other things, like, you know, groups of people fighting before, groups of people fighting after, who's who now. But he says that those stories are about the ancient Jews. Now, I've gone on to look into it, and I still am.
But he must be saying, in essence, that the Jewish people are related to the Britons.
Yes. He said he says that the stories of the ancient Jews are stories of the ancient Britons, but they're put over in the Middle East. Now, where that leaves the Khazars, I'm not entirely sure, but that's something I'm researching at the moment, and it joins up with Romani and Gypsy culture and Scottish Gypsies.
Oh, all
but
right.
I'm still working on that.
Well, how does it relate also to the Celts?
In a very, in either a very complicated and difficult way or a very simple way, because a lot of the problem with trying to talk about this is trying to tie it down and pin it down to a specific thing, so that the chronology, people will argue about the chronology of ancient events, like down to, 10 years here or there, and they'll say, but really it doesn't matter. The fact that there was an event, like an extinction level event then, recorded in ancient texts, the fact that that correlates to within a couple of thousand years with evidence of an extinction level event in the tree rings is really good enough, yeah? There's like one extinction level event round about there, and the general downturn and the sort of effects around the edges of it will spread out for hundreds, possibly thousands of years anyway. So you've got a sort of like little hill of an extinction level event rather than one point. And it's the same with the people. So we'd be talking about Celts and
well, the Welsh.
Britain.
I mean, the Welsh are Celts. The Welsh are Celts, right?
Right.
Okay, so their language they're saying is similar to Hebrew. So there's beginning to sound to be some kind of through line in the relationship between those two peoples.